Penguin Random House Audio presents The Innovation Stack, Building an Unbeatable Business One Crazy Idea at a Time. This is the author, Jim Mckelvey. To Anna. Introduction. Suddenly, we won. For over a year, a giant monster had chased us through the graveyard of corporate corpses. Amazon, the scariest monster on the planet, had copied our product, undercut our price, and was going to eat our brains. Then, without warning, on Halloween in 2015, the monster stopped the attack and handed us a treat. This treat was better than any bag of candy. Not only did Amazon discontinue its competing product, it also mailed the product's existing customers a little white square card reader in a smiling cardboard box. Happy Halloween! Was this a trick? Square, the little company that I co-founded with Jack Dorsey back in 2009, had just done something amazing. The odds of surviving an attack by Amazon would depress a Powerball player. But there we were, still alive after going nose-to-toe against the world's most dangerous company. Was this just luck, or had something else happened? I knew what we had done, but I didn't have any idea why it worked. I spent the next 3 years answering that question and eventually wrote this book. This is not the story of Square. Instead, it is the story of how founding Square led me to discover a phenomenon that applies across industries and even time. Square is a good example because I can tell the story firsthand. But if this were just about Square, I would not have written this book. What happened at Square was no accident. It fit a pattern. It's a pattern that repeats in a shockingly regular manner, and when it does, the companies that harness it become the biggest of their kind in the world. Patterns are funny things, for you can see them your entire life without ever noticing them. But once you finally notice, they appear everywhere. When I learned to notice this pattern, it was like finally seeing the world in 3 dimensions. I was still looking at the same objects, but now everything had depth. My enhanced vision revealed even more patterns that have changed the world. One of these patterns often appears in businesses whose aim is to square up, bring fairness to a previously unfair system. Squaring up can spark a series of interlocking inventions I came to call an innovation stack, one of the most powerful assets a company can possess. Innovation stacks evolve, mostly driven by survival instinct. If you try to do something truly new, you will encounter a series of new problems. The solution to one problem leads to another problem, sometimes several. This problem-solution problem chain repeats until you end up with a collection of both independent and interlocking inventions. Or you fail. We don't see the failed innovation stacks because they are never completed. And although the successful ones can be hard to notice, innovation stacks are at the core of world-changing businesses throughout history. This book will show you how to see them. Building an innovation stack all begins by choosing to solve a problem that nobody has solved before. Squaring up, righting a wrong, or solving an unsolved problem forces you to be creative even if you don't want to be. That's okay. Oysters don't choose to make pearls. Square's innovation stack helped millions of people make sales and get paid. It fueled such massive growth that our payment volume doubled every other month for 3 years. It also amazingly protected us from a direct assault by Amazon. But Square was not the only company to successfully wield such power. Innovation stacks are hard to see in the present. You can view them more easily by looking back in time, for they changed the course of history. In fact, much of history is simply a chronicling of ancient innovation stacks. From the thousands of examples that illustrate this principle, I have chosen 4 to examine closely. Square is one of them. But this book is not just about world-changing companies. I want to introduce you to the people behind these firms and show you what is extraordinary and ordinary about them. Business stories tend to have too much hubris and heroics and too little humor and humility. So we're going to meet some famous entrepreneurs, but perhaps not in the way you'd expect. For I also intend with this book to dispel the myth that entrepreneurs are somehow uniquely gifted. Entrepreneurs are rare, extremely so. But their skill set is not so uncommon, and I believe it to be something you already possess. It comes down to making a single choice, taking on a problem nobody else has ever solved and doing whatever it takes to solve it. The first step is finding a problem that is perfect for you. There are no checklists in this book. I would love to be able to hand you a map, but maps are for tourists and not explorers. The maps I've drawn for my own explorations won't help you, but an innovation stack will. It will protect you from the attacks of massive competition. It will allow you to do things once considered insane or impossible. And if you dare to build one, it will move us all forward and leave your mark on history. Let's go. Part 1. Solving a perfect problem. Chapter 1. Entrepreneurs and Perfect Problems. Before stalking got such a bad reputation, I was pretty good at it. My target was always the same, some famous business person. Entrepreneurship was not taught in school at the time. It still isn't, but we're getting ahead of ourselves a bit. So I had to invent a way to get instruction. My technique was simple. I would wait until some famous entrepreneur came to St. Louis to give a speech. After the speech, I would catch the speaker as he or she left the stage and offer them a ride to the airport. With the right attitude and a nice suit, I never got stopped. If anyone questioned my presence, I just told them I'm giving the speaker a ride to the airport. It was a good offer. Ride-sharing was 20 years in the future, and St. Louis taxis were run by a cabal of incompetent crooks, as if the grandchildren of the Three Stooges had joined organized crime. Cabs would routinely miss pickups or take the scenic route. I got the speakers to their flights with a minimum of pine scent, and all they had to do was share some knowledge. My technique worked every time except once. I learned a lot about business on those rides, but never what I wanted to learn. Every time I asked a question about some significant problem I was confronting, the answer would always be a variant of either, "You can't do that," or "Find someone who's already done that and work for them for a decade." None of these successful people knew how to do anything that had not already been done. I wanted to meet a different type of person. I just didn't know what to ask for. The right word. The English language currently has no word for our subject, but it used to. Like tattoos, the word entrepreneur has lost its shock value through sheer overuse. I no longer recoil when the babysitter has an angry-looking reptile crawling out of his collar or calls himself a child care entrepreneur. So-called entrepreneurs are everywhere these days, from the local dry cleaner to the freelance designer to the kid selling lemonade on the corner who, thanks to Square, now take credit cards. It wasn't always this way. When the word entrepreneur first puttered across the Atlantic by steamship in the late 19th century, it described a special type of person, a risk-taker who reshaped an industry through innovation. Joseph Schumpeter, the economist who popularized its use, described entrepreneurs as revolutionaries and wild spirits. They were outcasts, living on the edge of civilization, doing things that hadn't been done. But today, all business people are considered entrepreneurs, which is like calling all tourists explorers. The problem is not just semantic, because when I talk about entrepreneurship in this book, I mean something very specific. Let me explain with an analogy. On April 22, 2011, a terrible storm hit my hometown. The wind ripped roofs off people's homes. When I use the word wind, you may think you understand what I'm describing, but you probably don't. The wind in this storm was oddly selective. It obliterated 2 adjacent houses, skipped the next 7, and then trashed 5 more. Describing a tornado without using the word wind is nearly impossible. But as soon as you say wind, people immediately assume a bunch of things that aren't true about tornadoes. Wind moves linearly, but tornadoes drop from the sky at random. Wind doesn't suddenly multiply its power, but tornadoes curl back into themselves, becoming strong enough to toss a truck onto a roof or a roof onto a truck. Most places on Earth don't get tornadoes, so we lack the words to properly describe them. Imagine the difficulty of trying to explain a tornado to somebody living where the wind only moves in a straight line. If I say the phrase strong wind, you don't picture an airborne cow. Using the terms of business to describe entrepreneurship is like calling a tornado a strong wind. Yes, both the entrepreneur and the business person build companies, but businesses are everywhere, while entrepreneurship is as rare as a flying cow. The language of business doesn't work when we're discussing entrepreneurship. The words are already too laden with other meanings. In this book, When you hear the word entrepreneur, I want...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?